So let's get started with policy compliance. Okay. So Qualys policy compliance module. So let's first understand the service overview and configuration. Configuration we all will do in our respective console. Let's understand the service overview, features, capabilities, use cases, all that from theoretical perspective before we move into the configuration part. So when it comes to the service overview, policy compliance, as the name suggests, policy and then compliance. Uh, Policy basically means some expectations, some mandates that every organization wants to enforce. If it is a mandate, you will enforce. If it is an expectation, you would want to ensure that it is taken care of. It is followed. It is followed by the employees. If it is employee related expectation, if it is system related expectation, it has to be configured in the system. That's what policy is all about. Compliance basically means, as I said, mandate, that it has to be followed. It must be followed or it will be enforced. So policy compliance in Qualys helps organizations to ensure adherence to internal policies. There could be policies related to security. There could be policies related to system configuration. There are multiple policies. So it will help organizations to adhere to those policies. It also includes industry standards and regulatory frameworks. So it includes all of it, which is policy, standards, and framework. So internal as well as external policies, depending on the environment type that you support. Internal, external policies, regulatory standards, and frameworks. In fact, compliances also. So that's what it basically helps you to adhere to. Okay. The service provides detailed assessment and reporting to identify and mitigate compliance gaps, enhancing overall security posture. So in this service, once you have policy compliance configured, you will basically pick up certain standards, certain frameworks, and based on those frameworks or benchmarks, you will basically configure your service. The service will pick up those frameworks, benchmarks, standards, controls which are inherent to that framework, benchmark, or standard, and it will assess your environment against those controls and it will report the status. The status will either be complied or not complied. So either the control will pass, you will get green, all green. If they will fail, you will get red. For example, in the image, if you see, we have green and red both. And we have certain, it says top 5 passing policies, top 5 failing policies also. So we'll do all of it. Then comes configuration. Now configuration is divided into 4 steps. If you want to configure policy compliance, if you want to configure this solution, there are 4 steps to configure the solution. The first step is to identify a policy definition or create a policy definition. Either you will pick up an existing policy definition, benchmark, or framework, or you will create it from scratch. That's the first step, which is users can define policies by selecting or customizing controls from built-in libraries aligned with standards like CIS, NIST, ISO, HIPAA, GDPR, NIST. Then you will perform control mapping, which is you will configure the policies by mapping controls to specific compliance requirement or regulatory frameworks. After that, you will group assets. So after you are done with creating a policy, you will need to assign assets to that policy so that it can run against those assets and it can provide you results in terms of what is the compliance percentage. So asset grouping, IT assets can be grouped based on their roles, environments, compliance needs, allowing for targeted compliance scans. Then comes scan scheduling. After you assign assets, then you will schedule the scan. If we have enabled agent-based policy compliance, something that is not enabled in our trial, then the configuration profile that we were just looking at, it has PC module on it. And we configured the PC module to run every 4 hours. So it will run every 4 hours. It will scan for policy compliance every 4 hours. But since we do not have that capability enabled, we will do it through scanner appliance, which basically means we can either run on-demand policy compliance scan, or we can schedule a policy compliance scan using scanner appliance. That's what we are going to do here. So scan scheduling, users can schedule compliance scans at regular intervals or on demand to continuously monitor and assess compliance status. And in the end, you will report and alerts. So after the scan is finished, you can generate a report or you can configure alerting also. So it generates comprehensive reports for internal audits, external assessments, and real-time, near real-time on compliance status. That's what the service does. These are the key features of the service. I'll take a pause here and I would request you all to go through these key features. And then if you have any questions, let me know. These are the value propositions of this service that it brings on the table. Let's quickly talk about them. So automated compliance scanning, this is only possible when you have policy compliance module enabled via cloud agent. Otherwise, it will be either manual on demand or scheduled compliance scanning. Pre-built control libraries, yes, you will get a lot of controls pre-configured as part of policy compliance control libraries. Some of them are CIS benchmarks, NIST, cybersecurity benchmarks and frameworks, ISOs, and more. You can also create custom policy and customize existing policies to fit specific organization needs. You can perform near real-time monitoring. Once again, this is the capability of agent. Comprehensive reporting. You can generate detailed compliance reports for audits and assessments. You can perform control mapping. You can map controls to regulatory frameworks and internal policies. If there are policies which are failing, then it also provides you remediation guidance. You can group assets and assign policies to those assets. For example, there is an application which corresponds to an e-commerce platform, and that application comprises of 10 virtual machines, which is a combination of web, app, and DB modules of that application. You can create an asset group and group all those 10 virtual machines into an asset group and assign it to policy compliance, which is PCI DSS. So that PCI DSS compliance can be scheduled on those 10 virtual machines or on that asset group, and it can quickly identify based on the 12 requirements of PCI DSS that where exactly the application configuration stands, whether it is 100% in compliance, whether there are some compliance failures, all that can be done. Integration capabilities, you can integrate with other security tools and systems for streamlined operations. Qualys has integration with ITSM tools available, which includes BMC Remedy, Jira, ServiceNow, and many more. And user role management. The benefit of this approach is that some of the modules also allow user management module, wherein you can assign your team members access to policy compliance module and a certain level of access to that module. So we are going to look at all of these features one by one and configure it in the policy compliance. Let's look at the benefits. Give it a quick read and then I will explain. So all of this information I've taken from Qualys documentation. So you can trust this information for its authenticity. And you can probably, so I'll share all of these documentations, PPTs, all that I'm using in this training. I will be sharing it with you on the last day of the training. With my POC, who will then share it with your L&D person, and then they will probably upload it to a SharePoint or a common uh, you know, knowledge base or resource repository from where you can access all of it. All right, so the benefit that it brings on the table is it provides enhanced security posture. Obviously, when the business is aware of the compliances that they need to adhere to, let's say PCI DSS, GDPR, HIPAA, ISOs, which are not compliances but standards, it becomes easier for them to enhance their security posture and remain compliant. It performs automated compliance management, the regulatory adherence, which is very important. In Europe, if you're not complying to GDPR, it may result in, you know, high sanctions or penalties. Sometimes, it may result in severe consequences, which may result in cancellation of your business registration or the management probably putting behind the bars, getting put behind the bars. So that may also happen. Customizable policies, continuous monitoring, comprehensive reporting, simplified remediation, integration, improved efficiency, and boosted stakeholder confidence. Obviously, when your application aligns with compliances, customers get confidence to do business with you. So if I see an online application that is accepting payment information, that is requesting me to provide my credit or debit card data, and if I do not see PCI compliant on that page, I would probably be discouraged to share that information. So that confidence I will lose. And that is where adhering to compliances gives confidence to the business that they follow all the measures or best practices or controls which are mandated. Okay, next. Use cases and applications. These are the use cases and applications for policy compliance module, which is if your business needs to adhere to regulatory compliances, GDPR, HIPAA, SOX, NIST, ISOs, you can use this module. For internal policies enforcement, if you have internal policies that you want to enforce, you can use this module. This will help you in prepare for audit and also pass the audit. It integrates with vulnerability management module. So if there are vulnerabilities reported into the system, which also resonates to the control of PCI DSS GDPR, then you can see them together. Configuration drift detection, control effectiveness testing, IT asset group compliance, third party vendor compliance, and incident response. So it also provides you incident response capabilities with ITSM integration. All right, that's enough of theory. There is nothing more that I want to talk about from the theoretical perspective. Let's get into the lab environment, our respective console, and let's go ahead and configure this module. So when it comes to the configuration, it basically involves three main steps, which is create, which is identify the business objectives, which basically means what exactly I need to comply with, what exactly I want to assess for, whether it's a framework, whether it's a compliance, whether it's a standard. So identify the business objectives from compliance perspective, then create, I would say create from scratch or import and customize and or customize a policy from library. So either you create from scratch or you will import and then customize probably at the same time an existing policy from library. Library is the collection of policies that Qualys provides. So after you do this, then you will tag or associate assets to the policy. After that, you will perform policy compliance scan. And after the scan is performed, report generation. Generate compliance report and take remedial measures and monitor the policy compliance dashboard continuous activity. That's it. So it's a 5-step process, which is the configuration part, and the 6th step is more of an operational activity. So that's what we are going to do. We will start from step number 1 and we will come till the end, and that will cover this module incomplete. So let's go ahead and do this, which is identify the business objectives from compliance perspective. So I will need to identify an objective. So my objective is, let's say, I want to assess my assets, or I want to comply to CIS benchmarks or PCI DSS. So that's what my objective is, and accordingly I'll create a policy from it. So let's navigate to the portal. So in the portal, we all will navigate to policy compliance module. Now in the portal, you will see two information here. Under compliance, you see policy compliance and then you see PCI compliance. We'll cover both. So now the question is, why do I see a separate PCI compliance here? Because for PCI compliance, there is a separate module. PCI compliance was not part of Qualys. They acquired it from a third party, and hence there is a separate module. So you can see it takes you to a separate URL. Okay, let's go ahead and see the PCI compliance and policy compliance. We have two separate URLs. One for policy compliance. Policy compliance is, policy compliance is basically part of Qualys cloud platform. However, for PCI compliance, they have a separate module. So there is a separate module for PCI compliance, and it is only for PCI compliance, something that we will be covering tomorrow. Let's focus on policy compliance today. So on policy compliance module, when you navigate to policy compliance module, similar to all other modules, the default view is dashboard. A dashboard which provides you a comprehensive view of that service, the configuration around that service, any discovery or anything that it has discovered with respect to deviation, with respect to the capability that it brings on the table, you will see on the dashboard, default dashboard. And you can see the default dashboard for a specific time frame, which is for last 24 hours, 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, whatever you say, it is there. So let's get started. As I said, the first step of this exercise is identifying the business objective. So I've identified the business objective that I want to run a CIS benchmark scan for all my assets based on their operating system, and I want to report compliance failure. So CIS stands for Center for Internet Security. It's a non-profit body which is based out of US, and they are heavily invested into internet security. When I say internet security, let's say cyber security or information security, and CIS has basically created benchmarks. Benchmarks are nothing but a collection of controls around a specific operating system, platform, cloud. So you can see these are the benchmarks. CIS has benchmarks for softwares and applications like Exchange Server, Firefox, web browsers, Zoom, which is one application. Then it has benchmarks for mobile devices. It has benchmarks for operating systems also, and it includes multiple operating systems. For example, it has benchmarks for Microsoft Windows, a client operating system, as well as Windows Server operating system. So these benchmarks, are available for Server 2022, 2019, 2016. In fact, the end of life server versions, which are Server 2003 or Server 2008 and R2. So these are the benchmarks which are available for operating system. Similarly, they have benchmarks for cloud providers also, which is let's say Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Google Workspace, Microsoft Azure, Oracle Cloud. So these are benchmarks. Now, when you download any of these benchmark, they'll provide you this benchmark in a PDF format, which will contain information about the benchmark. However, if you are a CIS Workbench or CIS Secure Suite, member, or in other words, if you are partner with CIS and you basically either support them in putting together these benchmarks, updated these benchmarks, or you pay to CIS probably some sort of donation to them, then you become CIS Secure Suite or CIS Workbench member. And as part of it, they provide you benchmark in CSV format so that you can run a compliance audit against those benchmarks. And they also provide you automated solutions through which you can automate these benchmarks. So solution that can be deployed on a system and it can quickly assess the system against the benchmark. That's what it does. Now the same solution in Qualys is policy compliance. Using policy compliance, I can do the same thing. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a policy for CIS benchmark for the assets that I have in my environment, and I will scan my assets against that policy. So let's get started with policy. So policy is the first step. So we'll come back to dashboards probably later on, because right now your dashboard is completely blank. So we'll start with policies, right? Now there are two things. Whenever you click on a tab, you will see some tutorials here, which says set up policies, explore the control libraries. When you click on the tutorial, it basically, shows you the process of how do we do it. And sometimes it redirects you to Qualys documentation, which basically provides you step by step for that specific service. For example, for Qualys policy compliance, I have a documentation for both policy compliance and PCI DSS. So let's say for policy compliance, here's the documentation. This is the Qualys documentation on policy compliance. Now, don't just get, don't just think that it has not been updated. This is the date on which this document was published, but this document they kept on updating the document, and this is the most recent, it contains most recent configuration. So this is policy compliance getting started guide. This guide basically has all the information in terms of how do we create policies, how do we import policies, how do we create custom policies, how do we collect data, how do we report data. All that is available in this guide. So I'll share this guide with you. In the policies tab, when you click on policies, you will see the tab and all the policies which are there. Now, probably in your case, this is blank. There is no policy that you have created. Yes. In my case, Farhan is basically assisting me with this capability. He has already tested this capability end to end to make sure that the trial contains all the capabilities. And if there is anything which is not there, we will be well aware of it well in advance so that we can tell you beforehand that this capability we can't cover. So it will start with new. So you will click on new. This is how you create policies. There are two options, policy and download. Download basically means if you want to download any of all these policies which you have created, if you want to keep them for a record purpose, you can download all of them into CSV format, zip format, and other formats. Okay, so we'll click on new and we'll click on policy. Now, when we click on policy, we see four options. As I said, this exercise starts with identifying the business objective and then create from scratch or import and or customize a policy from library. So either you create from scratch or you import it. So you can see there are four options. First is create from scratch. You can create a policy from scratch. Second, create from host. Create from host basically means in some organizations, they use a concept of golden image. So what they do, they provision a virtual machine or a server. They deploy all the softwares, tools, and programs on that server, which includes any security software like EDR, VPN solutions, firewall, host DLP solution. They perform the OS hardening of that server, and they consider that as a golden image, an image that image or a configuration that they want on all the servers in the environment. And they call it a golden image. And with that golden image, they configure rest of the environment. So which basically means that when somebody joins your company, they are provided a laptop that contains an operating system a laptop that already contains a couple of softwares and applications from your environment, a laptop that already has an EDR solution deployed on it, a laptop that already has a DLP solution on it, a VPN solution also, because they have basically configured that laptop from the same golden image. So most of the organizations uses the concept of golden image. So if you have a golden image and if you want policy compliance to scan that golden image and create a policy from it, you can select the second option, which is create from host. Third option, import from XML file. If you already have a policy that you have created and you want to scan your assets from that existing policy, you can import that policy from an XML file. It supports policy written in XML file. And then the fourth option is, which is the most widely used option, which is the most convenient option, is import from library. So import from library basically means that Qualys has a library, a knowledge base of policies from all over the world, which includes most of the compliances, framework, standards, and controls. You can import any one of them and customize it based on your needs. So we will go ahead and click on import from library. Okay. All right, let's move on. So guys, now this is where you see a library. This is where we would like to spend some time because this is the crux of the solution. When you need to identify what you want to scan, you will see it here. Now, these are labels. Labels basically means this is a collection of controls. For example, you see new. New basically shows the most recent that has been added here, updated. The one which was there, however, they are now updated. CIS. So if I click on CIS, I will see all CIS benchmarks. I will not say that I will see all, but majority of the CIS benchmark, those are certified by Qualys. You will see them here. So you'll see CIS benchmarks for AIX, IBM, Alibaba Cloud, Linux, all the, or these are all operating systems. Basically, you see benchmarks here. You see benchmarks for software and applications like Checkpoint Firewall, the one that some of you work with this solution. Cisco ASA, Cisco IOS. You see benchmarks for Debian, Dockers, F5, which is primarily a leader in load balancing and web application firewall. You see benchmark for Google Chrome, which is a web browser, Google Container. You see benchmarks for IBM Database, IBM DB2. You see benchmark for IBM WebSphere, benchmarks for Internet Explorer, benchmarks for Juniper, benchmarks for Mac operating system, benchmarks for Exchange Server, Microsoft Office application. You see a lot of benchmarks here, right? So since we wanted to run a CIS-based policy scan, we will need to identify benchmarks for our assets. Now, what exactly my asset is running as we speak? My asset is basically running a Windows operating system. My asset is also hosting a Google Chrome browser on it. My asset also has Internet Explorer. So I can identify that. So let's start. Let's create a policy for operating system first, because that's the main policy that you will find everywhere. So let's scroll it down and look for Windows operating system from this list. So over here, you can see probably at the end of the list, you will see Windows here. So for example, I have Windows 10 operating system, right? So I have Windows 10. I have Windows Server 2016. I have Windows 2019. I've selected all of them. Windows 2022 to begin with. So I've selected all these technologies. So these are, so when I make any selection, to the right hand side, you will see policies against that selection. So when I had only Windows 10 selected, you can see only Windows 10, it says there are 120 policies for it, for Windows 10. When I include Windows Server 2016, the number increases by 24. Now it is 144. Similarly, when I include 2019 and 22, the number increases. Now I have a total of 190 policies against the selection that I've made from CIS. Now over here, I can select any one of them, any one of the policy. So there are many that I see, CIS benchmarks. Now all the policies that you see, they are related to Windows 10, Windows 2016, 2019, and 2022, which would include operating system benchmarks, which would include software and application benchmarks that you can deploy on Windows. So you can see all of these benchmarks here, right? Now let's just deselect some of them so that we see less. And now you see all of these benchmarks for Microsoft Intune for Windows 10, benchmarks for Microsoft Windows 10 Enterprise, which is automated and manual BitLocker. You see a lot of benchmarks here. So you will select one of the policies. I'm saying these are policies. You need to select one of the policies here and then go to the next page to do the rest of the configuration. So if I want to scan my operating system, Windows 10 operating system, let's say for CIS benchmarks, then I would have all of these options here. So I can only select one policy at a time. I cannot select two policies here. If you want to create multiple, you can do that. But out of all the possible combinations for Windows 10, which is 120, you can select any one of them. You don't have a search option here, which is one of the drawback. Wherein you can't search, you will need to scroll it down and look for what you are looking for, right? So you see all of this. Now I'm looking for something related to operating system. So keep searching for it unless you get the one for operating system. They are all for operating systems basically. So let's pick up any one of them. You also see the dates, the date when they were released, 2022. So let's pick up the one which are the recent one, which were basically released this year or probably in December or November last year. So this one. So no, not for Cloud Agent, not for Cloud Agents, code level. This one. So CIS benchmarks for Windows 10 Enterprise, release 1809 and this. Now, if you want to scan for a specific policy, then you can also see the version of your Windows operating system. That will be available in the asset tab. When you will click on the asset, it will show you the operating system version also. So let's pick up this one for the demo. So we'll pick up CIS benchmark for Microsoft Windows. You can pick up any one of them. Or instead of CIS, you can say, okay, let's start with the Qualys one, which is this Qualys one. Instead of starting with a third party, let's start with what Qualys brings on the table, which is something that Qualys has basically white labeled. So we select Qualys and then you see a long list here. Over here in this list, you need to select Windows 10. Once again, you will not get search button here. You will need to manually search like this, manually keep coming down, and then you will reach to where you want to be. For example, Windows 10 is here. So when I select Qualys and Windows 10, I only see 11 policies. Now they are customized by Qualys. So I can see Qualys policies for security control validation for Windows 10, compensatory controls for exploited vulnerabilities, Qualys security configuration and compliance for remote desktop. All 11 I see here. Password policy best practices for Windows, Mitre attack, top 10 attack, security configuration and compliance policy for Zoom client, best controls for malware, security configurations, all that you see here. So Qualys policy for security control validation on Windows platform. Let's pick up this one. And any one of them, let's say, I'm just giving you, the food for thought that this is how you get started. So I'll just pick this one for the demo perspective and click on next. So after you select a policy is nothing but a collection of controls. After you're done selecting a policy, you will have two options. One is import as unlocked and activate this policy. Right? Now understand the difference. If you do not check this box, import as unlocked, the policy will be imported as locked. Locked basically means if the policy contains 100 controls, all those controls will be evaluated against your assets and results will be provided. However, if you want to customize it, instead of creating a policy from scratch, you want to probably pick up an existing policy and customize it. Then you will select as import as unlocked. So import as unlocked basically means that I am selecting a policy, which is Qualys policy for security control validation on Windows. And I want to modify it. I want to customize it. So anything that you want to customize, select this checkbox and activate this policy. Now, if you don't check this box, the policy will be created, but it will not be activated, which means it is of no use. You will just have a configuration under policies tab, but that configuration will not be evaluated. So I'm going to select both the checkboxes so that I can also show you the customization part. So I'll say import as unlocked and activate this policy. So if I uncheck it, then my policy will not be available for scanning and reporting. It says clear this box to activate the policy at a later time. So policy will be created but not activated. So I'll check both the box and click on create. After I click on create, it will create this policy. And since I have checked import as unlocked, I will be given an option to customize this policy or customize the controls which are part of this policy. Okay. Now this policy, let's see the policy overview. So this policy, which is Qualys policy for security control validation on Windows platform, this policy has 5 sections. These are the sections, which is like classes or categories. 7 technologies. It includes 7 technologies, which means this policy applies to 7 technologies, and these technologies are operating system. So this policy has, Windows 2019, 2016, Windows 10 and other, all of these technologies. And against each technologies, there are number of controls assigned, you can see. So since I selected this policy for Windows 10, out of 144 controls for Windows 10, 140 controls are assigned. Majority of the controls are meant for Windows 10, but for other operating systems also at the same time. Okay, so 5 sections, 7 technologies, and 144 controls. And you see the control bifurcation across those 5 sections. So 35 plus 6 plus 74 plus 27 plus 2, if you add them all, it will come out to be 144, right? So that's how the 144 is. Now, since I have unlocked this policy, I'm saying I have, created this policy as unlocked, I have the capability to modify this policy. So for example, under antivirus, there are 35 controls. If I want to remove the entire section, I don't want any of the assessment to be done for the antivirus that I have in my system, I can directly hit remove here. When I hit remove, this entire section will be removed. If I want to add additional controls, I can add additional controls also. If I want to copy all the antivirus controls and probably create a separate policy from it, I can copy the controls also. If I want to edit any of the 35 controls which is there, I can click on edit. So let's click on edit and let's see those 35 controls which are there. So these are the 35 controls which are there. Now, if I want to, once again here also, I can remove controls and I can add control. Let's say there is a control that says number of days passed since the last Sophos antivirus update. What if I do not have Sophos here? But don't just get confused. This is not for Sophos. This is basically for any antivirus. Status of the Kaspersky virus definition database older than number of days. It is just for the understanding purpose. It says Sophos, Kaspersky, Trend Micro, or Semantic. Don't get confused. This is just trying to help you understand that this is basically for the update. You may have Defender, you may have any antivirus. So if you feel that you don't want this control, you can probably remove this control, you can edit this control, or you can inactivate this control. Now, what is the difference? If I say remove, the control will be removed. For example, randomly, I'll pick up one of the low critical control, which is here at the bottom, for which the criticality is medium. This control, which says stat of a scan removable drives Windows Defender setting. I can remove it. So it says, okay, are you sure you want to remove it? I'll say yes. So now the control is removed. I'm left with 34 controls out of 35. That's how you remove it. Let's say you want to edit any of the control. You can click on edit and then the control window will open and you can edit the control. For example, the control is related to number of days passed since the last Sophos antivirus update. And the duration, the acceptable duration is 7 days. So it says if if there has been an update of the antivirus, not Sophos, any antivirus which is there on the system, if it was updated in the last 7 days, the policy, the control will pass. However, if it was not updated in the last 7 days, the control will fail. Now, what in your organization you use an update policy which is for 2 weeks? Every 2 weeks you update the antivirus solution. So in that case, you can edit this control and you can say that my acceptable days is 14. Now, when this policy will be evaluated against the asset, which is hosting Windows 10 operating system, it will check whether the antivirus was updated in the last 14 days. If it was not updated in the last 14 days, the control will fail. If it was updated in the last 14 days, the control will pass. So that is how you can update a specific control with respect to its configuration. You can either edit it or you can remove it. And whenever you make any edit to the control, you will need to make sure that you make a note of it. Similarly, you can click on Windows Server 2008 and put the duration. You may probably have a separate duration for client and server in your environment. Put that accordingly. So configuration takes majority of the time. I'm saying putting together a solution takes majority of the time rather consuming that solution. Consumption is a day-to-day effort, but creating a policy takes a lot of time. It requires brainstorming. It requires hand-holding with various teams. And then you finally come to a conclusion and put together a policy. So you will need to get this information probably from Wintel team who manages servers and client. Ask this question, uh, collaborate with them, decide on a time frame, and accordingly put the policy control here, right? So for example, I'm putting Windows 10 as 14, but rest of them I'm leaving as 7. After you do this, at the bottom it says save. You will need to save it, right? So after you put this at the bottom, you will click on, so you don't click on save now. Let's just do rest of the configuration that you want to do. You can always click on back to controls and it will take you back to the control with this setting. Change whatever you change it to. I clicked on save by mistake. So it is now saving the policy, which means I'm assuming that I'm done with all the capabilities. One thing that I did not do or which I wanted to do. Okay, great. It did not take me back. So I can save it and back to the controls. So this is how I can make changes to all of it. Now, what is inactivate? Inactivate basically means that the control will not be deleted. However, it will be deactivated. So the evaluation will not be done against this control. And in the compliance results, your score will not be impacted by this control. That's what inactivate basically means. So for any of the control, I can inactivate. It says, are you sure you want to inactivate the control? Status of the version. This is the control basically. Host intrusion. This is the control you want to inactivate. So I can say yes. So I have inactivated the control. It says activate. I have added one of the control. And I have removed one of the control. So I have shown you all the options: remove, edit, and inactivate. Is everyone with me so far? Any questions? Okay, next, add and copy. Let's say I want to add, related to the antivirus category, I want to add one more control. So I can click on add control. When I click on add control, it will show me all the controls. You can see a total of, all of these, a total of 3,420 controls are there, which matches this technology, which is antivirus. And these controls are coming from other policy types. You can see a total of 3,420 controls. On one page, it is showing 35 controls. So you can pick up any of the control, status of IS administrator service, let's say one control, and you can add it like this. So you can also add additional controls related to that technology, which is antivirus in this case. It's adding the control. Now the total number of controls under antivirus technology will be 35 once again. Okay. So the controls are added. This control is added. You can see here. I can click to back to overview. All right. So now it has 35 controls, antivirus. Similarly, I can go to other sections, which is firewall section, miscellaneous section. There is more that we need to do. Since we are running short of time, I'll just, I've just explained one option. In the same manner, you can explore other sections also. Look for the specific controls in that section. You can add or remove controls. You can inactivate control. You can delete control also. So this is how you basically modify a policy that you import from a library. That's exactly what I said. Either create from scratch or import a policy from library and or customize it. All right. So once we are done with this, then comes the most important part, which is the next step. Next step is associate asset to this policy. You're creating a policy, you're importing a policy. Unless you associate an asset to the policy is good for nothing. So now this is where the asset part is on the same page, which says asset group and tags. So now you want to associate assets. How do I associate assets? If I had cloud agent, if I had policy compliance enabled via cloud agent, then I would not have to do any of this. Then this is not needed. But since cloud agent doesn't support policy compliance in our trial, I will need to either use asset groups or tags. So you already have tags that you have created at the time of Cloud Connector, or you also have asset groups. So I can click on edit and I can add asset group. If I have asset group, I can select that asset group from the view. I have one asset group that has all Azure VMs, or I can select tags and I can put my tags, which is Azure and Azure resources. So any one of these you can do. You do not have an option to put the IP addresses here. It only supports asset group and tags. So I'm going with tags because you all have Azure resource and Azure tag. Just click on save. So now that you have added tags also. So at this stage, your policy is complete. So once again, we have imported a policy from library, which is a collection of policy database. We have imported Qualys internal policy for Windows platform. We have made appropriate changes as deemed necessary based on our business requirements. We have added additional controls. We have removed obsolete controls or unnecessary controls. We have, we have also inactivated some of the controls which are not needed at this moment as we speak. We have done all of it, and we have also assigned assets based on group or tagging to the policy. So after we do all of it, now one more thing you can see here, you can add controls and you can add section also. So this policy has 5 sections. You can click on add section and you can add additional sections also over here. It says you've not added any controls yet. So you can click on add control and once again you see here. So you can do this also. So I click on back to overview. So you can add sections, you can add controls, you can remove controls, you can do all of it here. All right. Then in the end, once you're done with this exercise, this is the exercise which will take majority of the time on your part as a policy compliance professional, because majority of the heavy lifting will be done here. And once you save it, it will have your name. If there are multiple people, it will have their name and user ID. It will have the time, all the information, right? Okay. Then comes save. Now, before you click on save, it says block other users. Now, this policy was imported as unlocked, which means you can still make changes to the policy. After you save this policy, you can go back to the policy tab and you can once again make changes to the policy, amend this policy, customize it. And all other users with the same role, your role is manager. So Raghuveer Singh, who is the current user with manager role, is doing all of it. Now, do you want other manager users to be able to customize this policy in future? Then you need to turn this on and you will need to put comment here. And what will happen? It says locking policy will make them unavailable for editing. This will still be available for reporting. So if you enable this, if you turn it on, block other users, then all other users with the same permission or lower permission will be blocked for customizing this policy in future. And if you keep it off, then other users with the same permission that Raghuveer Singh has will be able to customize this policy in future also. That's the concept of locking here. So I'm just keeping it block other users so that only I can customize it. Nobody else can do it, and save it. So this is the final piece of the puzzle, which is create from scratch or import and then associate the policy. So we are done with this step. Now the next step is perform policy compliance scan. We have created a policy. We have customized it based on our requirements and need. Now we are going to perform policy compliance scan. Policy is saved. You can see here. Now you can close this policy editor. So I've closed the policy editor. I'll refresh my screen and I'll see my policy here. Okay, so I see this policy here, which is Qualys policy for security control validation for Windows platform. I see my policy here. Is everyone with me so far? Great. Next step is to run a scan. Now, how do I perform a scan for this policy? For that, I will need now rest of these things. So on the policies tab, I see policies. Now you understand the policies part, which is if you have selected a policy, then you have certain actions, which is activate, deactivate, lock, unlock, evaluate, delete, and clear selection. So you've seen all of it. If you want to create a new policy, you can do by using these options. Search will help you to search for policies. If there are 1,000, then you can search from the number. And then next is control. Now over here, it shows all the controls. It shows all the controls which are there. You can see a total number of controls is 24,656 controls. All the controls which are available, it says Qualys will deprecate the vulnerable MD5 hash type because MD5 they don't use now for file and directory integrity checks effective this date. And it also says that if you want to still go for it, then use SHA-2 or SHA-5 signatures of the applications to identify vulnerabilities. So these are all the controls. You see these controls across categories. So if you want to search for a specific control, you can search for it here. Let's say I want to search for a password related control. I can put the identifier, the control database number, or I can put a text here. So I can say password and I can search for it. Now it will show me all the controls which have password in it, which are related to the password. These are all the controls that it starts to show. So I see a total of 2,538 matches to the search string that I provided. And they will all have password here. So that's how you search for control. Now, after searching for control, you can select a control, click on action and export that control and create a policy out of it. You can, for an existing control, you can edit its criticality. For example, this control is serious, but I want to edit its criticality. For me, it's not serious. For me, it's medium. So I can edit it also. That's the control part. Then comes mandates. Mandates are nothing but compliances. This is another, mandates are basically your library. The import from library feature is here. It shows you all the mandates which are there. So you see all the compliances which are mandatory, like Swift compliances, Swift, you see secure control framework, SCF, you see other compliances also here on this page. So NIST compliances you see here, New Zealand Information Security. If you want to search for anything, you can type it like GDPR and search for it, and you will see here GDPR. So in the mandate, it shows all mandatory compliances basically. And then after you select it, once again, the same options, which is you can generate a report against this, or you can click on new and you can download this mandate also. Okay. Then comes next, which is setup. Setup basically means you can set up the framework, criticality levels, technologies. For example, if I click on framework, it says the following option will be applied to all framework or customized frameworks. You can search for it. These are all the frameworks which are there. So you can set up those, frameworks, save them. You can control criticality levels for any policy or compliance. This is criticality level, which is minimum, medium, serious, critical, and urgent. And you can also change it. You can define the criticality level here also. Like this, you can change the color coding, all that you can do here. And then technologies, you can also select technologies or customize technologies. It says display all technologies. So you can save it and it will display all the technologies which are available in the technology section. Okay, so that's some setup part. So we are done with the policies tab, all the options on the policies tab. Next is scanning. We'll move on to the next, which is scanning. We want to run a scan today so that tomorrow when we resume the session, we will have some data available. Now, the condition to run a scan is, since we are using a virtual scanner appliance, if your vulnerability management scan failed, if your vulnerability management scan did not find any data, or if it has permissions issue, the policy scan will also fail because it will use the same authenticated scan method, which means it will use the same credential and it will look for the same permissions. So please make sure before you run the policy compliance scan that your vulnerability management scan using Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance was successful. Is everyone with me on this? Alex, Vipin, Anandapa? Okay. All right.
Yes.
Great. So we are going to run a scan. Now, before we run a scan, since we are not using Cloud Agent here, if we were using Cloud Agent, our job is done. After you create a policy and assign asset to it, automatically every 4 hours, the policy will be evaluated. But since we are not using Cloud Agent, we will need to either run an on-demand scan or we will need to schedule a scan. So let's first run an on-demand scan. Now, before you run an on-demand scan, you will need to create an option profile. So we'll go to option profile. And over here, we'll create a new option profile, which is compliance profile. Similar to vulnerability management scan, you will create a profile here. So let's click on option profile and let's create a new compliance profile, because this is where you will select your policy. This is where you will provide the configuration to the scanner appliance. So I'll select my option profile. I'll put it a title. I'll say demo option profile January 15 2025. If I check this box, make this a globally available option profile, it would mean that the profile will be visible to other users also. Other users who will log into this portal. Okay, next is scan. Over here, I will select the scan performance, which is normal. You already know what is the meaning of performance now because you've seen Cloud Agent concept, normal. Then scan restriction. Now over here, I will select the policy using which I want to scan. I want to run a scan. So here I can select an item. These are the policies. This is the list that I have. So this is the one that I created, which is Qualys policy for security control validation for Windows. So I select my policy here. Whatever you select will come here in the box here. Let's say you want to include multiple policies in this profile. You can also select one more. For example, this. So whatever you will select will come here in the table. So now I've selected two policies, right? One is CISA top 10 cybersecurity misconfigurations. This is another policy that was created by Farhan, and Qualys policy for security control validation is what I've just created. So this is where from the drop down you can select multiple. It only shows the policies which you have created. Okay. After you select After you select the scan restriction, which is scan by policy, then you have additional additional configuration that you can select, which is if you feel that the systems that is going to be scanned using these policies contain databases, you can also check all of these boxes, but they are not important right now. That's the only thing that you needed to select here, which is the policy that you want to scan. Rest of the configuration you can see they are standard. Port scan, it is targeted scan based on what is there in these policies, based on the controls. Then comes system authentication. Make sure in the system authentication you will have selected system created record. Why we are selecting this? Because we are using Azure user credentials for running the scan, because that user credential has all the permissions on the system. So in a domain case, you can select user created. Since our systems are out of domain, we'll select system created. This is the most important setting, guys. If this setting is not checked, your policy compliance scan will return no results. Okay. After you select this, then comes instance data collection. What kind of data you want to collect from authentication? So since we already have Windows authentication selected, databases is out of scope for us, and any other VMware and whatnot is out of scope. So leave this as it is. Then in the additional, since you've selected standard port over here in the scan at the bottom, you've selected targeted scan recommended. If you want to change those parameters, you can change it here. All of this here. That's it. So the most important part here is selecting the policy for which you want to run a scan, and then selecting the authentication records, which is system creation. Is everyone with me on this? The option profile is created. So my option profile is created. You can see here demo option profile. That's it. Now I will go to PC scan window once again, and I will initiate a scan now. So I'm back to PC scans. Now over here, I will go ahead and run a scan. So I click on new and I will click on scan. And this drill, you already know what needs to be done here. So I'll say PC compliance demo scan January 15, 2025. I provide the title to my scan, and then here I'll select my compliance profile. The profile that I've created from here, option profile. The profile that contains the exact policies against which scan needs to be done. So in the drop down, I see two. This one is created by Farhan. This one we just created, demo option profile. I'll select my option profile, and now I'll select my scanner appliance. So this is my scanner appliance, VSA. I'll select. Once again, if I had policy compliance module enabled on my cloud agent, I would not have done this exercise. I would have waited based on the agent configuration profile time frame, which is 4 hours default. Every 4 hours, my agent would have run this scan. But since this is virtual scanner appliance, I am doing an on-demand scan. Okay. Over here, after I select this, I will select assets. Now, even if you do not select assets, the same assets, it will still apply. Because if you remember, while you created the policy, at that point in time, you have selected the tags. So policy already applies to those tags. But since those tags are critical for cloud agent, not for virtual scanner appliance, you're selecting this information. So now I select my asset groups or tags, whatever I want to do. So I can select tags, and I can say add tags. Tell us which host IP address you want to scan. So I can say add tags, Azure and Azure resource. So I've selected my tags, which is Azure and Azure resource, or you can select IP addresses also like this, because you have that IP address range selected by now. So this is my IP address range. I can also say this is the same thing that you've done with VMDR scan. So you will select the targets that you want to scan, and in the end, you will hit launch. That's it. So now this is launching a policy compliance scan for the policies that you have created a couple of minutes ago against the assets that you have selected in the asset tab. It will scan those assets based on 144 controls which were there. In my case, in your case, depending on what you've selected, it will run a scan that will take some time, probably half an hour. On an average, it takes anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes to complete the scan. Once that scan is finished, it will return the results. After the scan is finished, you will start to see the results in the dashboard. And once the scan is finished, then we'll move on to the next task, which is generate report. You will only be able to generate the report after it completes the first scan. So I'll mark all of these steps as green for the record purpose. So tomorrow when we start the session, I would know that this is where we need to start from. So it is now running the scan. As I said, it will take time to complete. However, while it is running the scan, let me talk about the additional tabs real quick. So PC scan, you understand it. You can run the scan from here and see the previous scans and their results. Schedules, if you want to schedule any policy compliance scan, you can come here, you can click on new and you can schedule a scan. If you want to see all the appliances which are there in your system, you will see appliances here. So some tabs will show the same information or some tabs are redundant. The same tab is available in VMDR. Same tab is available in patch management and other modules also. Option profile. These option profiles are specific to policy compliance, not to VMDR. Authentication. The same authentication window that you have seen in VMDR is here also. So right now, these are the authentication credentials which I have. In the details, if I see all my systems are, all my systems are green for it. So things are good here. Okay, next is setup. Setup is nothing but the default configuration if you want to set up. Now, this information is not common to policy compliance. This is everywhere. So this is my scan tab. So we are done with the policies tab. We have gone through all the options. We are done with the scans tab. Tomorrow, when we resume the session, we will start with the reporting part, wherein we will create a report of the scan that we have completed so far, and then I will show you how do we create an automated report template. All that we will see. So tomorrow we will look at the rest of the tabs, which is reports, exception, assets, and users. That's the agenda for tomorrow. And once we are done with this, I will talk about PCI DSS, which has a separate module, which is here. A separate window for PCI DSS. We'll also configure this tomorrow. And that will conclude the policy compliance module. And that will probably take an hour